are ancient fish. They lived during the Devonian age.
I know that one. It's Bothriocephalus.
Bothrolepis is, I think, what I would call that. Hello, I'm Thomas Halliday. I'm a paleobiologist and author, and I'm here to break down scenes from prehistoric movies. Right now we're going to take a look at a scene from Ice Age.
Call it the Big Chill or the Nippy Era. I'm just saying, how do we know it's an Ice Age? Because of all the ice!
So, this is a great scene. Because it features so many of the lesser-known mammals. So I think this is meant to be a macrocenia, which is a type of animal that is found in South America until really not very long ago, only a few thousand years ago, which make them really interesting.
But Dad!
No buts! You can play Extinction later.
Okay. Come on, guys.
This could be meant to be one of a couple of things. This could be meant to be one of another South American native ungulate order, or it could be Phiomia, which is an early relative of elephants. Yeah, this kind of preservation, this is a nod to things like the Rancho La Brea tar pits, where big herbivores typically get stuck in tar, which naturally seeps from the ground. And as a result, you get huge concentrations of just specifically herbivores. You get like a herbivorous sample of the ecosystem, and very few carnivores except those that are trying to scavenge on the already dead carcasses that have just got stuck in the tar.
So, where's Eddie? He said something about being on the verge of an evolutionary breakthrough.
These are glyptodonts. These are quite enormous animals. They get to about this high off the ground. I'm sitting down, but that's what, a metre and a bit off the ground, some of them. They are armadillos. For a long time they were thought to just be cousins of armadillos, but they are actually more closely related to some of the living armadillos. And you can see that they have this armoured shell, and they also often, there's a couple of spikes on the tail of that one, so they sort of analogous to what ankylosaurs were doing as dinosaurs, but this is sort of the mammal version much more recently. So one of the things that you see here is not so much compressing time together as compressing places together. So here we have typically North American creatures like a woolly mammoth, and typically South American creatures like macrocenia and glyptodonts and things like that. So that they would not have lived together. And of course, creatures did not just migrate away from ice en masse. That's for the liberty of storytelling.
Hey, I'm up!
So Sid is meant to be some kind of ground sloth. I don't think it's ever specified exactly what sort of thing, but ground sloths used to be really, really diverse. Another sort of typically South American group, but there are also ones that made their way up into North America as well. Sloths today are limited to essentially two types of sloth. There's the three-toed sloth and the two-toed sloth, and they both hang in trees, and they both just slowly eat vegetation and sleep and not much else. But sloths used to be extremely, extremely diverse. So the biggest burrows that we have from the fossil record were dug by giant ground sloths, and you can still go to see those in Brazil today, and they are big enough for a shortish person to walk upright in them. They are absolutely astounding. In the Miocene, so this is about 15 million years ago, in what is now Peru, there was a marine sloth called Thalassocnus, which had quite dense bones even for a sloth, and would swim down and eat the forests of seagrass. So the sloths today are really a shadow of what they used to be. There's also one general thing about Ice Age, which I think is really good. I use Ice Age in my lectures on mammal relationships, because the main characters in it, there's the herd, which is Sid, who's a sloth, Manny, who's a mammoth, there's Diego, who's a saber-toothed cat, and then there's the human that they're all looking after. And those four represent the four major divisions of placental mammals. So Sid is a xenarthran, so this is a group of mammals that have unusual backbones. They generally reduce their teeth, they have sharp claws, and it's sloths and armadillos and anteaters and things like that. Man is an Afrotherian, which is a sort of African group of mammals, which includes aardvarks and dugongs, as well as elephant shrews and hyraxes and other things like that. We, as humans, are in the group called Euarchontoglires, which is a horrible long word, which is kind of combining names for rodents on the one hand, but also primates and our kin on the other. And then finally there's the Laurasiatherian, which is Diego, and Laurasiatheria is the extremely diverse group that includes everything from bats to whales. But a saber-toothed cat is also one of those. So I just really enjoy that you can just have a picture of the Ice Age herd and properly appreciate the initial diversification of mammals. I mean, as a whole setting, it's not at all accurate. The animals are pretty well done. I mean, it's fairly recognisable as a Pheomi and a Macrocenia and a Glyptodon. So for overall biology, probably about a 2, but the models are 8. Okay, now we're going to look at a Czech film called Cesta do Pravěku. This is not as obscure as you might think for a 1950s Czech film, because it was rebroadcast in America in the 70s. It's sort of iconic among paleo art and representations of paleontology. And the premise is that these 4 boys start going down a river on their boat, and as they go further along the river, they travel further back in time, and they encounter ever older environments and ever older creatures. And so this scene is when they're arriving, it looks like in the Carboniferous swamp. So the Carboniferous was a period approximately 350 million years ago, which is best known for being the era that we get most of our coal fuel from. Right, so the Carboniferous, it's named for the fact that there are all of these coal measures. And this is, I think, pretty much exactly what a Carboniferous swamp would have looked like. It's the first time on Earth that you get trees as we would imagine them, right? It's the first time where you get this collection of vegetation. And so one of the things that we're seeing in this bit is quite how peaceful it is. I think that when we're this far back, we're talking about a time when there aren't really vertebrates on land. So there'll be no bird song, there'll be no bright flowers yet. Flowering plants don't come along until the early Cretaceous. It's a time that is so sort of divorced from our own experience of what the world would have been like. So I think the peace of just punting through this swamp is probably about as accurate as you could make a representation of the Carboniferous. And in fact, the advantage to travelling to the Carboniferous is that there's nothing there that's going to be adapted to blood-sucking on big vertebrates either, so it's probably a lot more pleasant than some of the swamps that are around today to go to. Actually, that's a very good shot there of the bark of a scale tree. Unlike modern trees, they were able to photosynthesize all the way along their bark, so they have this sort of green texture to them. And each of those diamond-shaped patterns once held a leaf when it was growing, which has then fallen off, and as it grows higher and higher you get a long thin trunk which then divides at the top, and you can actually see the representation of that in the background there. So it's a sort of very good example. There's the fallen tree that is eventually going to turn into peat and into coal. I mean, this is great. This film is just such a great illustration. That is a fantastic scale tree model, and below that you've got enormous horsetails growing. This is exactly the sort of environment that the Carboniferous is really famous for. And you can still see some of these forests today. If you go to the Fossil Grove Museum in Glasgow, you will see the trunks of scale trees, the sort of stumps of them, in their life position as they were back in the Carboniferous. It's a wonderful place to visit. Oh, I mean, that's an easy 9 or 10 out of 10. I mean, that's fantastic. Yes. Not dramatic, but accurate. And the next film we're going to look at is Ponyo. Okay, so those there are some sort of lobe-finned fish that are swimming along an underwater road. So fish, as we think of them, are not one biological group. There are some fish that are more closely related to us than they are to other fish, which means that biologically, if you want to say that something is a fish, either you have to say that it's just to do with their ecology and the fact that they're doing all of that swimming, or you have to include us within it. So either you are a fish, or fish doesn't mean anything, or fish just means something ecological or culinary. And these are lobe-finned fish, which means that they're more closely related to us than they are to, say, a trout or a shark. Their fins have one single bone at the base, which is just like our humerus or our femur, and which then divides into two, which is like our ulna and radius or our tibia and fibula, and then it goes into the fin rays. So here we're seeing some sort of Devonian fish. The Devonian is a time period which was approximately 400 million years ago. So it's from a little before 400 million years ago to a little bit after. Oh, and on the tree there, climbing up, are those meant to be trilobites? They might be. Trilobites are a group of arthropod that is pretty iconic, really. I mean, they appear in the Cambrian, right at the beginning of complex predator-prey relationships in ecosystems more than 500 million years ago, and they last all of the way up to the end Permian mass extinction 250 million years ago. So they're extremely long-lasting. They had incredible eyes that could focus at all distances simultaneously, possibly. Their eyes are made out of crystals as opposed to our sort of weird biological jelly lenses. So yes, trilobites are a fantastic group of creatures that, incredibly diverse. And behind them as well, I mean, that looks like those fish there which have the single fin that's stretching over the tail and also the top and the bottom of the body, that looks kind of like jawless fishes, I think. So some things that are very distantly related to us and would also have been around in the same kind of time period as the trilobites and these lobefin.
I don't see her.
You can see a fish there on the right of the screen, which has this kind of crescent moon-shaped head, and that is another one of these jawless fish. It's really good to see the sort of diversity of fish evolution that was going on in the Devonian, because this is a period before there were any vertebrates on land. So insects had gone onto land, plants and fungi had gone onto land, arachnids had gone onto land. But in the Devonian, vertebrates were essentially restricted to life in the ocean. And we're getting towards the point where there are some that are quite like us tetrapods. These lobe-finned fish are beginning to sort of develop the capabilities that will eventually lead to them going onto land. But it's a wonderfully sort of diverse place.
Those are ancient fish. They lived during the Devonian age.
I know that one. It's Bothrocephalus.
It's Bothrolepis is I think what I would call that. So that is a placoderm. Placoderm means platy skin because the placoderms have these sort of armoured front halves. The back half of them, no scales, it's a sort of soft body. And Bothrolepis has that the armour sort of extends out onto the fins. So these are some of the earliest jawed fish, placoderms, and we are, in a sense, placoderms as well, because the placoderms gave rise to all of the other jawed fish, including cartilaginous fish like sharks and the bony fish like us.
And that one is
Dipnorhynchus.
Dipnorhynchus.
Okay, so if it's got a name, I don't know about whether Dipnorhynchus is a real name, but that's not one I've heard before, but dipno is the word for lungfish, so that is clearly meant to be specifically a lungfish. Of the lobe-finned fish, there are three main groups. There's the lungfish, there's coelacanths, which are a group that was thought to be completely extinct for hundreds of millions of years until one was trawled up from the deep sea only a few decades ago, and were discovered to still be alive. And then the third group of lobe-finned fish, which is also still alive, are the tetrapods, us, the four-limbed creatures. The fact that I could, recognise some of the species that were there to definitely being a Bothrolepis or that's a lungfish, they're very accurate. I mean, obviously it's a fantastical film, but I'd say I don't know, 8, 9, 10. I can be very generous with these. Thanks for watching. You can get my new book, Otherlands, by clicking the link below. And click here to subscribe to Penguin and watch more videos like this.